So this video is changing the way we see Native Americans. It's another TED Talk one. It says TED Talk Teachers College, so I think it's one that's at the college. I think I've done this same guide before in a different video. But anyway, we'll see. Thanks for watching.
My prayer is that this experience stops. My dream is that our children are given images that are more useful, truthful, and beautiful. Respectfully, I ask that you take this image instead. Smiling, incredible Indian, Anishinaabe, Pima, Lummi. Beautiful, culture-bearing, activist, and the 1491s. Grandma, grandpa, auntie, cousin, president, Tolowa, Tlingit, Zuni, Pachanga, persevering, thriving, Bahajoni, Peaches, Brandon, and royalty. Musician, PhD, elder, and fashionista. Loving, serving, Havasupai, Talela, Crow, entrepreneur, filmmaker, scholar, prayerful, fisherman, attorney, fierce, veteran, linguist, husband, and wife. We, you and I, the five-fingered beings, have so much in common.
Hello again. So it's not the person I thought it was who was going to be talking, but I've heard a lot about her and that she does a lot of these TED Talks that are very informative. I like hear how she says, we have so much in common, but at the same time, we also have a lot of things that are different about us that we should celebrate. But anyway, let's see what she has to say about that and how we can change the way we see Native Americans. So.
We might look different on the outside, but on the inside, we feel the same. We want the same things. And together, I believe that we can change the way that Native Americans are viewed in massive media. We can make a conscious choice to reshape the way that we imagine Indian country. In my work, I seek and photograph positive Indigenous role models from this century. And today, I'd like to share some of those stories with you. This is Gloria Grant. She's the Associate Superintendent from the Chinle Unified School District, which is in the Navajo Nation, the land of the Dene people. Its high school is the largest primarily Native American public high school in the United States. 97% of the students are Dene, and I loved visiting with Gloria. She reminds me of my auntie and my mom and my cousins all wrapped up into one lady. And one thing that I love about Navajos is the way in which they always introduce themselves. She says, I'm from the Dene Nation. I am born for the Totochini people, the Bitterwater people, the Kia'anis, which is the Wind Clan. When you introduce yourself like this, it humbles you to recognize any of those people who have come before you. It is also recognizing those sacred elements that make us up of who we are. It keeps us in line that we are humble people made up of these substances of the earth. That is who I am. For 15 years, Gloria worked on creating a relevant Navajo curriculum at the Chinle Unified School District. She candidly reflected upon the experience. I worked with nothing but medicine men, spiritual men, women, and herbalists. These were the people that we should stand in awe of. They know so much. My academic degree was nothing compared to their knowledge. They know the songs, the prayers, they know the ceremonies. They had wisdom. I have a degree. Actually, I have a couple of degrees. But there's a difference. You could have all the knowledge in the world, but it's wisdom that makes change. You need to believe in what you are doing. This is my good friend, Desi Small Rodriguez. Her Cheyenne name is Mukshiut, which means bare mint woman. And she's a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. And ooh, Desi's fierce. Really fierce. And she has a master's degree from Stanford in sociology, social stratification and inequality. And she worked as a senior policy analyst in research and statistics at the Ministry of Maori Development. And this April, she goes back to New Zealand to finish her PhD. And one of the questions that I ask all of my participants is if there are any interesting details about their tribes they would like to share. Maybe some details that aren't written down in the history books. She says, as a young person, it's hard to tell the history of the tribe. We're really taught as young people that we should listen more than we talk. They call us the Fighting Cheyenne. And they call us the Fighting Cheyenne because we fought for everything that we have here today. I've grown up knowing that we are here because 300 of our people made it back from Oklahoma. They escaped in the middle of winter after being forced into Indian territory. They were dying of famine and disease. And so two of our chiefs, Dull Knife and Little Wolf, decided that they were going to make a run for freedom. And if they died along the way, at least they died trying to get home. It is this really amazing tale of survival of what a people would do to get back home. They were chased by the cavalry the entire time. That's a reality that our people still live with. It's not something that's written down in history books. It shapes your entire life, knowing every day that my ancestors died for us to be here. That really tells the strength of the Cheyenne people. Gail Small is Desi's beautiful mother. She's an attorney, and she worked for the people for many, many years. And when I talked with Gail, she told me something that really stuck out to me. She told me that the Cheyenne people will always bring their people home. That after they pass away, even if they've been living off the reservation for many years, maybe they're living here in New York City, they will pay to bring them home for a Cheyenne funeral, because that is where they belong, at home with the land. And when I asked Gail what it means to be Indian enough, she said that measurements of blood quantum do not define who we are. It is through our connection to the land, connection to the spirit, and connection to our people that we become who we are, and that is who we will always be. This is John Trudell. John is Santee Sioux, and he's an artist and longtime American Indian movement activist. He was the spokesperson for the Indian takeover of Alcatraz from 1969 to 1971, and he later served as the chairman of AIM. And I was super excited to get to meet John because, you hear about these rebel activists, and I was like a little kid knocking on his door. I was really excited. And I didn't even know how to approach him properly, but I asked him, what he learned from the civil rights movement, from his time, from his activism. And he said, I wouldn't have encouraged Native pride so much. I would have encouraged the gratefulness and humility more. Something like native and grateful or native and thankful. Pride is not our word. We're not Indians. We're the human beings. And all the tribes that you go to, none of them will identify as Indian. They will identify as the name of their tribe, and that name usually means the human beings. In our own language and identity as human beings, the basis of the whole thing is humility. Raymond Max is one of my heroes. I didn't know it until I met him. I didn't realize that the sacrifices that he'd made had already impacted my life. You see, he was arrested 19 times while fishing on the Klamath River. He was the first Native American to take his fishing rights case all the way to the Supreme Court. And he told me this story about how their set net was out and they could tell that it was full of fish. When a net's full of fish, it will bob. And the feds were there with their big guns, as were the reporters with their cameras. And he knew that if he went out and checked his net, he'd be arrested again. So they were standing on the shore and there was all this commotion and he didn't know what to do. And his grandma goes, "Oh, I'll do it." And so she paddled out in her little 2-man canoe, singing an honor song, and picked the net. And the reporters came and took pictures, and the cops came with their guns, and that went on the cover of a magazine. And then they won their court case. They won half of the fish and game and wildlife at the Yurok tribe. And then that set the precedence for the Judge Bolt decision. And the Judge Bolt decision gives us half of the fish and game and wildlife in Washington, where I'm from. And my parents are commercial fishermen, as is my brother and my cousins and most of the people from my village. So I was really honored to get to have the opportunity to thank him personally. This is one of my favorite Cherokees of all time. Her name is Adrianne Keane, and she's a fierce educator, doctoral student in culture, communities, and education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And she's the author of Native Appropriations, which is a blog that's dedicated to talking about Native representation. And I'm going to read you one of my favorite quotes from her blog post entitled, "Why Tonto Matters." We are taught every day explicitly in classrooms and implicitly through messages from the media that our cultures are something of the past, something that exists in negative contrast to Western values, and something that can be commodified and enjoyed by anyone with $20 to buy a cheap plastic headdress. These stereotypical images, like Johnny Depp's Tonto, feed into the ongoing cycle. And until we demand more, our contemporary existence, and therefore the real problems in Indian country, simply don't exist in the minds of the dominant culture. How can we expect mainstream support for sovereignty, self-determination, nation-building, tribally controlled education, healthcare, and jobs when 90% of Americans only view people, my people, as one-dimensional stereotypes situated in the historic past, or even worse, situated in their imaginations? I argue that we can't. And that, to me, is why Tonto matters. This is Stephen Small Salmon. He works at the Incusum Salish Immersion School in Pend Oreille in northeastern Montana. He began working at the immersion school 10 years ago because in his lifetime he saw the fluency fall from 100% to 10%. Their goal is to bring the language back to the Salish Kootenai people. He says, "I did the language all my life. I went to boarding school, but my mom, dad, and grandparents all talked Indian to me when I came home. So I was honored for that. I have a drummers group. I dance to honor the elders that came before me. I enjoy working with kids, especially the little ones. They're really happy all the time. I never did think we would lose our language. Today, I can truly say that we almost did. And so today, we do our best to save it." Tatanka means is Oglala Lakota, Omaha, and Navajo from Chinle, Arizona. He is the son of the late Russell Means. I met Tatanka last year when I was in Albuquerque. And my good friend Valerie said, "You have to meet Tatanka. He's a great leader." And I have to be candid with you. I was like, I just didn't think that a 28-year-old actor was a leader. And you know what? I was wrong. I really was. There's just something about certain people. I don't know if it's the legacy from their family or just who they are inside, but Tatanka just transmits inspiration. And he doesn't really identify as an activist. He considers himself an actor, a stand-up comedian, and a motivational speaker. And he says, if you ever get caught in a room full of Indians and you really aren't sure if you've said the right thing, maybe you asked, should I call you an Indian? Should I call you a Native American? Maybe you asked if, you were kissing your cousin. I heard about that on the reservation. you can always just go, eh? That's an Indian joke for you. You can use that on the res. This is Winslow Nosey. He is the former chairman of the San Carlos Apache tribe and a great spiritual leader for his people. 2 weeks ago, I was visiting him in San Carlos Apache in Arizona. He took me to the prisoner of war camp that held the Apache people for many years. And that is where I took this photo. And when I went there, I was overwhelmed by the same feeling that I got when I was in Auschwitz. And Mr. Nosey wanted to have his picture taken here in remembrance of the hollow ground, formerly known as Hell's Hole 40. And we had a long conversation about the people, about the work he had done, the struggles he has encountered to protect sacred sites, traditional lifeways, and serving his people. And when I asked him about how we recover from these historical traumas, he said, we have to remember that in the very beginning, there were 4 blessed gifts to the world. And those are the 4 colors of people. If we go back to the ancient ways, the people who are white, black, and yellow, they are our relatives. That's why in Apache, there is really no word for other races except Chiqui. Chiqui, meaning that they are a relative of us. And so you have to go back to the very beginning. And that beginning is when we knew about harmony. We knew that all that God created on the earth has a spirit. And when we all knew that, and we were all in sequence together, we treated each other like brothers and sisters. I've been traveling, shooting, and collecting stories for over a year now. And the experience has changed me. I'm really not the same as I was before. And the road has been hard on me. I've slept on people's sofas, and I've grown tired, and I've had to push through my homesickness and my relationship loss, fear, lack of comfort, no juicer. And I just came from Louisiana, where I photographed the Choctaw, Tunica Biloxi, and Coushatta in the bayou, I came, yesterday, by the way of 19 tribes in the desert in Arizona. And tomorrow we're headed to upstate New York to photograph some tribes around here. So, my feet are on the ground. The war pony is moving. And I've taken in the stories of those who trusted me with their truth. I've felt the struggle, and I've been lifted up by our human desire to endure. And so it is with these stories and images that I'd like to share some medicine with you. A new system of knowing, a new way of thinking, a new way of loving and appreciating and valuing. And I just felt like this was something I should do. It's in my traditional way as a Swinomish and Tulalip woman to offer closing prayers when amongst large groups of people. So I hope that you'll indulge me as I take a moment to do this. To the Creator, grandmothers and grandfathers, and the people of this place, and those that came before me and walked here, we'd like to ask for your special blessing today. I'd like to say a prayer for healing, for our minds and hearts, and for all of you here today. I'd like to say a prayer for the 2-legged, the 4-legged, the winged beings, the sea creatures, for the water, I'd like to ask you to open up our minds and hearts, to take away our fear, take away our struggle, and give us the courage to find a new way to respect one another, a new way to honor one another. So for all of you and for all of my relations, I offer this humble prayer. And I apologize for anything that I didn't say or should have said. I'm young and I'm still learning, and I hope that you'll take pity on me for that. And so, with that, I say Tikwitsid. I raise my hands to you. Thank you all for being here. Have a good day.